how do you feel about gathering with people and talking and just like really having that sense of community? Is that something for you that really lifts you up too?
Yes, I actually was laughing about this. There was somebody had a poll and says, "How do you rejuvenate?" And I realized, so I have a Facebook group called Microschool Florida for parents and educators, but that's where I go when I want to answer all of my questions. And they said, "Are you a social person? Is that where you get all of your answers?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I built that group for me so that I could have a personal place to like vet all of my questions and take polls and whatever I needed to do." But I thought that was funny. But it's like my main way of figuring out things is by putting it out there. So yes.
Yeah, that's cool. I had a sense about that with you. And it's so funny how we build what we need. This podcast, I can say, is very much like that. Like, I just started out being really curious about things and needing like some parenting advice. I'm putting that in quotations and just like really just like having this need to learn more. And that's what this was for me. And it's funny how it evolves and it becomes like this source of fulfillment, I suppose.
Yes, it does. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's so cool. So you are a mama of 6 kids, yeah?
I am. Yep.
And this phrase is really interesting to me, and I've played with it a couple times in the podcast before. And I'm curious if you can help me break this down and what your thoughts are on this phrase. And it goes something along the lines of, and I don't even know who to attribute it to, but it goes something along the lines of parents are only as happy as their unhappiest child. And
That's
which
funny.
gives us, I know, and I'm glad that you're laughing. That's like, I know, because it's like, well, if that's true, then that's really sad because then we're basing our happiness on someone else being happy. So how do you feel about that? Being through the teenage years, having even some adult children, still having, younger, not young kids. Your youngest is 12?
Yeah, she's
Okay.
12. Yeah, my
Okay.
oldest is 25, my youngest is 12. We always had this phrase in our family that only one person could have a meltdown at a time, which whenever you meet somebody who has a big family too, they totally get it. And so I also run a micro school too. So we have like 10 to 12 students in Tapestry Academy, these little groups. And sometimes we'll get these kids that are only children who will come and join our group. And it's like they're joining a big family. And then they'll have like, I need some attention right now, but I'm like, hold on, you don't know the rule. Only one person is allowed to have a meltdown at a time.
Totally.
The kids who come from big families, they get it. They're like, "Oh, now is not my time to be asking about this, that, or the other. It's not my turn. I need to wait for it to be my turn." But it just makes me laugh about, you're only as happy as your most unhappy child. Because I don't know. I think it's just your perspective, because that by itself could just be like a comical thing. Like, if, man, nothing makes this kid happen. They're like cynical about everything. How do we get through this? There's just so many personalities that come with families, and then there's that quote, "Ain't nobody happy if mama ain't happy." You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Whatever you want to view your perspective, you can find whatever you want. But
Yeah.
I think just being in a group or a dynamic where you're seeing each other all the time, you're going to bounce off of each other, and good energy, bad energy, whatever it is. I was sick for a few months, and I noticed that my energy was really revolving around my sickness. And I said, I am not feeling like I'm attracting that good, happy energy like I normally do. And so I needed to shake it off and reset. And I stuck a sticky note that says, "Never underestimate the power of a clean desk." And so I spent the week like cleaning up my space and making it so that the energy could just be different, like opening the windows. I was really trying to just do everything to just change the energy, change my focus. And like, no more watching Netflix when I don't feel good. Instead, I'm going to listen to audiobooks, because that's one of my goals, is to listen to classics and do different things. But instead, I was like swirling into blah, I just feel yucky. And as soon as I started doing that, it was within 3 days, I felt like myself again. And I thought, oh, behold the power of just like making the space be what you need it to be. And I'm still sick. Like I still have the things that I need to fix, but I feel infinitely better and I feel hopeful and that everything's going to work out. You know what I mean?
Totally. Something we've deduced thus far in this happier series, we've really kind of like figured out that there's this line that we're towing, just like this tightrope. And it's like kind of letting go of the extremes on one side or the other. So that's interesting that you brought up that phrase, when mama ain't happy, nobody's happy, because I buy into that phrase more than I buy into you're only as happy as your happiest child. And so that's interesting because that just I didn't even occur that those phrases were kind of the two polar opposites, maybe like, kind of a paradox, I guess. So I'm glad that you brought that up because I'm like, oh, it's kind of the same thing in reverse. But I really like how it's just like bouncing off of each other. And there's moments and there's happy moments and there's frustrated moments. There's meltdown moments and there's all the moments. And we can all get through those together, is kind of what I'm hearing you say, right?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And I think too, whenever you do go through those moments that are kind of the yucky moments, you need to always follow up and make sure that everybody knows that we're all okay. Like, I still appreciate you or I'm sorry that I did that or I wasn't present when you needed me to be there and that was on me. I'm sorry. I promise that I will be better about that in the future. So, I don't know, we just need to own it and not be like, "Hey, I know everything," cuz sometimes we come across that way to our kids and we don't have to be that way. Even in our microschool just this week, I apologized to one of our students because I wasn't there when I needed, I was in another room finding art supplies when when something happened, a little kerfuffle happened, and I thought, oh, I could just blame it all on the kids and saying, hey, you didn't know how to handle this. Or I could say, hey, that wasn't really wise of me to not have anyone present for that 2 minutes when the crazy happened. But I think it went over well just saying, I apologize for that. And let's work through this. And is everybody okay? And anyway, it's just really good to just admit when things didn't go as awesome as you wanted them to. And kids really, they're really good at seeing if you're honest and sincere about those types of things. They can tell when you're faking it and when you're not.
That's true. And it's just real life. Like it's just reality of the human experience that things go wrong and we mess up and we make mistakes. And just because we've been alive decades longer doesn't mean we are nailing this thing. Like we still mess up too. I think that's one of the most humbling things to show our kids.
Yeah.
Something you say in your micro school community is while pursuing lifelong learning, cultivating character, and lifting others, we find joy. Is that really the cornerstone of your mission? And how does that play out in everyday life for you and your students and the parents, even in the community?
I think that's just a core thing for me in general and our family. So my husband and I, we've been married for forever. It's going to
For
say the year.
infinity.
My husband is way better remembering the actual number of years we've been married. So anyway, if I say the wrong number, I'm going to be in trouble.
That's above our pay grade. We don't know. We don't know
Oh,
numbers.
so funny. It's past 25 years. But anyway, since the beginning, we've always been that way. So we're a family about doing service. We're a family about helping others and lifelong learning. Like my kids are always like, we never have summer. We always have to learn and do stuff. And I said, well, why not? Like just because you're not signed up for an official class somewhere doesn't mean you can't say, hey, we're going to learn about this deep dive on sewing or robotics or whatever is fascinating to us. We did a summer once of just trying to learn German. We stuck little note cards all over the house and tried German foods and, just finding those things, but being curious and doing it together as a family. And I don't know, it's just really fun.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm a lifelong learner. I've always got a book or two books or seven books open, the audio books. Like I love learning. And I asked one of my kids the other day because we were debating, we were towing the line between like this, do we pivot back to homeschooling now? I think I have it in my vision to pivot back to homeschooling as they approach and get into the middle school years, but we'll see how that plays out.
Mhm.
But the decision was to keep them in the sweet little alternative school that we have them in, which is fine. But so I said to one of my kids in this discussion that we were having, because it was a family discussion. It wasn't just us, like my husband and I made the ultimate decision, but we want to know what our kids have to say. We want to know their opinions and we want them to voice, what's on their hearts and minds. And so I asked her, if you could learn about anything, what would you learn about? And she said, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. Like sometimes when somebody asks me, I can think of an instance yesterday where someone asked me a question and I was like, words gone. I don't know, but then 20 minutes later, after I had some time to process, I was like, oh, that thing and that thing, it comes back to you. But this point that I want to unpack is that she said, I don't know. And I thought, okay, well, how do I? And I never really circled back around to it. So maybe this isn't a great example, but like, I'm curious how we pull on these like tiny threads of our own interests, but like our kids' interests too. Like, how do we get them to realize what they want to learn about? Like, I mean, I thought I'm asking her if she could pick anything in the world to learn about, what would it be? And I would say like 17 things maybe, but I was surprised that she was like, I'm not sure. So, how do we like spark, I guess, that inner curiosity that I believe is there, but sometimes has a hard time bubbling up?
Yeah. One of my favorite books is called Thomas Jefferson Education. It's very short, but the whole idea is this: forget about your kids' education, focus on your own. You read the books, you learn how to play that instrument, you get up early and go on a run and do all those things that you're trying to encourage your kids to do all the time. And then your kids are going to see you doing it and think, maybe I should do that too. And there, you open up a math book and you start doing math problems and you start saying, this one took me such a long time to figure out. I am so excited that I conquered this. It's just, you forget about, let me tell you that you need to learn. Instead, let me become a really awesome person because I cannot wait to learn the next thing. And it's just contagious. And I don't know. I just love everything about that concept. Instead of like, turn your attention over to them. Here's all the things that you need to fix. Instead, what do I need to fix? And likewise, your kids will just follow along and be like, okay, there's no secret in creating good kids. It's you need to be that kind of person yourself, You just need to be that way.
Wow. That was not what I was expecting for you to say, but that's so amazing because I feel like we talk about all the time on this podcast how it starts with us, it starts with us. But it never occurred to me that it starts with me for things like education. And I do, as you were talking, I was like, oh, we project this like unlived kid, version of ourselves that we wish would have learned how to do a cartwheel. I don't know how to do a cartwheel. We wish we would have learned how to speak German, for example, like these things that we might feel like are missing from our lives, like subconsciously, and maybe we project them out to our kids. That is brilliant.
The book is actually so tiny. Half of it is just the idea of you just focus on your own learning, get off the conveyor belt, don't do what everybody else is doing, just find your passions and pursue them. But then the other half of the book are book suggestions and things to help launch you into that. It's just really tiny, but that's been on my top 10 list for probably 15 years. It's been a really good one. The whole idea is they based it off of Thomas Jefferson, obviously, but that he was very knowledgeable about all kinds of different subjects. And he became that way because he was just a curious learner. So anyway,
Cool.
which makes me think about too, because I'm reading a book right now. It was, what is his name? Victor. Of course, I'm going to mess it up. But
Viktor
anyway,
Frankl?
yes, Man's Search
Man's
for
Search for
Meaning.
Meaning.
But he talked, I don't remember, and there was another one. It was The Gap and the Gain. I was reading that one, and that was what pointed me to Viktor Frankl's book. But in between those two books, they talked about Thomas Jefferson, and then they said, and the pursuit of happiness, meaning that you could never get there, which I think kind of circles back to your whole podcast thing right now. I don't know. Thomas Jefferson got me out of my slump of like homeschooling and being able to focus it and making it more of a a family adventure and a me adventure, and then a lot more fulfilling. And so the pursuit of happiness means you'll never get there. I don't know. I feel like I found my happiness by becoming a lifelong learner and being curious and, I don't know.
Oh, that's
So it's
good.
kind of an interesting twist of it all, but
Yeah.
yeah, just finding meaning in things, but also being curious and instead of letting life pass you by, kind of like when I was sick and I was in the, hey, let me just watch Netflix again. That's not being curious. That's just waiting for life to pass by so you can move on to the whatever's next. So anyway, totally different frame of mind. And the one is a lot more fulfilling than the other, you know?
Yeah, there's a big difference. It's like McDonald's versus like an amazing home cooked farm to table
So true.
meal. You know, it's like at the end of the day, you're like, ooh, or you're like, wow, like this the satiation. Is that
Yeah.
a word? Satiation. I don't know. That the satisfied feeling that comes from that. It's a big difference. I agree with you. So you say so many of us in education, entrepreneurship, and caregiving are constantly pouring into others. Like, yes, all the time. But we don't always stop to ask what we're pouring from. If we're not intentional, we end up running on empty, or worse, running on frustration, comparison, or burnout. How did you come to this realization and shift to really be intentional in your life?
That's interesting. I'm thinking about when you said that. So my main key phrase, I heard it in a talk a long time ago, but it said you can't serve from an empty platter. So when you wake up in the morning, think about you have a platter that you're going to serve from that day. If you just race out the door and you're always like, oh, I didn't get that ready. You're always going to feel frustrated because there's never going to be enough things placed on your platter to be able to feel like you can give and share. But instead, if you wake up in the morning and you're filling it with like good positive energy and maybe a walk outdoors and um I don't know. I always say like fill that morning with good books, like with your scriptures or with podcast it's pouring into you. It's not necessarily like I keep like my fluffy books, not necessarily fluffy books, but books for entertainment for like the evening time. But then the morning time, I want to fill those with things that are going to just empower me and give me good ideas for when I'm having a moment. I could be like, oh, yeah, I remember I was listening to this or thinking about this. So when you fill your plate all the time, with exercise and all those things that just make you feel like a really whole person, that's filling your platter. And then you're able to give and give and give. And it's okay because you have so much, you have ample to go around. But instead, if you wake up and you're like, I don't have anything to give, then you're forever going to be in a depleted spot. And there's no way to ever fix that until you decide to change your mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah. I recently was reminded of the most important hour of your day is 30 minutes before you go to bed and 30 minutes after you wake up. And it's just being grateful and thinking about all the good that you did and really just counting it as look at all this awesome stuff I was able to be present for and participate in. And I am just really grateful. And then when you look forward into the day, what would I like to accomplish? And if it doesn't happen, it's okay, but it's where your heart is and where you're feeling that is the most important part of it. And that can flip within like a second, just based on your attitude. So,
Yeah. So good. I think we, as the busy caregivers and the educators and the parents, are like, not one more thing, not a morning routine, not a nighttime routine, not a this, not a that, not a that. And what I'm really hearing you say, though, Candi, is that it's not adding any more like doing. It's more about adding kind of this being or this receptive state where you can allow yourself to be poured into from perhaps a simple book, a very short, meditation on your app, like for 2 minutes, or like something that you can kind of passively receive to inspire you and help you kind of just step into that next, you know, next spot on the rhythm, that next place on the timeline, which is like, the breakfast routine and the da 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 and the drop off or the car line or whatever it is, stepping into that with more. grace, I think the word that's coming to me, you know?
Yeah. Well, and you can squeeze those little things into weird times. Like, say you missed reading or getting something in and you're racing to take your kids somewhere, you can still listen to it as you're driving in the car. You don't have to immediately jump into the talk radio shows or the people talking about stupid things that happened on whatever. Like, those things are fun, but I think there's a time and place for it. If you haven't filled your platter, you're not ready for that yet. You need to have something substantial first.
Yeah.
Even if it's at like 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, if you haven't done it yet, put it in there, you know?
Put it in there. It's as simple too as like, I know this sounds ridiculous and kind of gross, but it's as simple as like a shower for me some mornings. So like a shower and like blow drying my hair, it just feels really good. Like it
It
can
does,
be
but
like,
sometimes that doesn't happen till 3 p.m., so you just
sometimes it
gotta be
doesn't.
like, "Okay."
Still feels good at 3. Still feels really good at 3. But
Yeah,
yeah, just like it's I'm really trying to frame it for everybody with us as like simplicity, right?
yes,
Because the last flipping thing we need is like more pressure, more, self-induced pressure, really a lot of it because we're trying to be the best, do the best, raise the most resilient kids, the kindest, smartest, most successful, whatever that word is for you. And we get lost in knowing that what produces the most success, what produces that long term sustainable, success is joy, happiness, being in the present moment, being curious, living fulfilled,
yes.
It's as simple as that.
And we need to count our successes looking backwards because when we look forwards and we're like going towards the ideal and we're like, oh, I'm never gonna get to where that thing was. What my amazing goal of back when I was 21 years old, I weighed such and such, right? You don't need to be measuring yourself towards that. It's good to have goals and to look forward, but when you want to count your successes, look backwards and you're gonna find there's like some like think about like what were you doing 90 days ago? How far have you come in 90 days? How far have your kids come in 90 days? What about a year? What about 5 years? But look backwards and then you'll say, "Oh my gosh, that's right. I didn't think that I could do that one thing and yet I did. It was really hard and I did that." So, whenever we're feeling frumpy and we feel like we can't find that happiness level, we just need to look backwards. They say count your blessings, blah blah blah. It can be as simple as that. Just look backwards and count your gains. So
Like, look at how far you've come.
look how far you've come and stop worrying about the fact that the ideal hasn't been met yet. That's okay. You'll get there. You just got to keep counting, looking backwards.
Yeah. Okay, so you talked about a time when we were dialoguing for this episode that someone you felt like you perceived that somebody had taken an idea that you were building and was like running with it. And it did this thing to you that you were like, what's going on? And will you tell us about that? Because I think, like real life, we all have moments like that of this person doesn't like me, or this person is copying my idea, or,
Yeah.
this networking, relationship didn't work out. I guess I suck and what I'm selling isn't good enough, blah, 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 all this stuff we do. So, what did you do with that? And how did you come up from it too?
It took me a couple years to tell you the truth to get through it
Thank
completely.
you. Yeah.
Time heals all things, but it was with a lot of effort too. But it was pouring myself into my audiobooks. That sounds so dumb. I just did not have any space to get through. Whenever I'd see anything that I was like, oh my gosh, that's really frustrating, I would swirl into the I'm a middle school girl. It's like I'm a grown woman and I'm like pouring into tears over this stupid thing that I think so and so thinks this of me. And that's totally not true. How could they think that? So, of course, that's middle school all over. But I got through it by just listening. I filled my platters so full of stuff that there was literally no more space to even think about that. There was just
Yeah.
no more space. There was only ideas and plans to move forward with new ideas. And it was just really exciting to get through that. And I also felt like I had unlocked this giant box of gloom and frustration. And I was like, that doesn't even matter. And I am good friends with the people Fast forward 2 years, that for a certain period of time, we just needed to be really professional about it and say, "Okay, here we are. Here's my boundaries, and I'm gonna just do my best." And it was painful, but I got through it, and I would say that I am infinitely a better person from going through that. So I think we just need to always remember, maybe my platter was a little depleted at the time, and I was putting too much thought or energy into what I thought was gonna be something, but it didn't need to be that way. There's so many ways to create and build things, and we also need to realize that all those thoughts and ideas that we have, it doesn't just come to one person, it comes to lots of people at the same time because it's just time for that idea to come forth. That's just what it is. So you may be the lucky one to get it, but also 20 other people might have that same idea. And whoever has the time and tenacity to push it forward, those are the ones that are going to say, "Hey, I created this thing," but it doesn't mean other people didn't have that idea.
Have you read Big Magic by Liz Gilbert?
No, I probably should.
Well, that's her part of the premise of the book is that these ideas are kind of floating in this, like, whatever solar system or, floating in the ether, whatever. And every once in a while, this idea, comes down to, the lucky person or the muse or whatever. And the person takes it and runs with it. Like it's very similar to what you're saying. So I figured you had read that, but
No, yep.
really, really cool concept. See, and there you go. Like case in point. And I'm so glad though, Candi, like thank you for sharing that with us because we all have those middle school moments. Like we do. And we go straight back to 12 years old, red face, like, oh my God, like, and I'm listening to a book right now called No More Mean Girls. And the reason I started listening was because I have, tween girls and I just am, there's nothing major right now, but it's just an interesting read to me, an interesting listen. And I thought, I'm learning a lot from this book, actually. And this is like a really helpful, approach to how to be a good friend, what feels like a good friend, how to, work through conflict, which many of us weren't taught how to do, and so it's a really interesting take. So no more mean girls. I'm only a little bit through, but it's an interesting listen for sure so far. And that's what that reminds me of. We all need that resilience when we get into those moments.
You do. It's a life
Yeah.
skill.
It is. It's a life skill. Amen. So you are so generous, Candi, and you're just like, I just love having you in my network. I love having you here with us today. Your work is brilliant. I'm going to put your LinkedIn profile link down below. So if you want to connect with Candi, reach out, tell her you heard about her on the show. You're such a valuable resource and you're so generous with your time and your knowledge and your wisdom. So thank you for that. And then thank you for being here today too.
Thanks, Ryan. You're the best.